Good evening. It is 6 p.m. Today is Thursday, December 10th. This is the Olentangy Local Schools Board of Education. This is a business session, so we will be voting on action items. With that, I will call the meeting to order. Mr. Kern, please call the roll.
Mr. Bartz?
Happy to be here.
Mrs. Fiesel?
I'm happy to be here.
Mr. King?
And likewise, I am too, thank you.
Mr. White is not in attendance. Mr. O'Brien?
I am here. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I had a levy bond information for him too.
All right. The first order of business is the agenda. We've got, everyone should have received the addendum to the agenda.
Yes.
We also need to amend the agenda.
The addendum, what is online has been amended, so there has been
It's properly posted.
it is properly
Isn't it?
posted,
Okay.
yes.
We had a last, for
Yeah.
those who may not have a chance to look at it, the server purchase, we changed vendors because there's a price reduction, which is good. About a 10% price reduction.
Up to $4,300.
All right, so with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as addendum.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any discussion on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Fiesel?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes, and first item is a presentation, so we're going to recess to the cafeteria and enjoy a performance by the Alum Creek Elementary School Choir. You're welcome to join us. How long do you think?
15 minutes.
15
tops.
minutes, and then we'll be back in this room to resume the meeting. Back.
I think we are.
Yep. All right, we will resume with the agenda. The board president's report is next. I've got two things I want to cover. One is redistricting. As Mr. Rafe announced yesterday, final decision on the redistricting plan. I want to take the opportunity to thank the efforts of the attendance boundary committee and all of the leaders of that group, as well as the literally hundreds of members of the community that participated in the process. Redistricting is never easy, but I believe we were in a very inclusive and transparent process. And I was impressed. I know we all had the opportunity to attend the community forum. The dialogue was great. The analysis was really solid. And just, want to acknowledge that these changes, for many, for some, will be difficult but are necessary. We've got real overcrowding needs that we had to address, and we addressed them in a very reasonable way. And we can now shift our focus to doing everything we can to support the transition, to support, very smooth and seamless transition for those affected students. So thank you to the ABC committee, and appreciate that. The next item is something I've been looking forward to for some time, is the opportunity to recognize Mr. White for his time on the board and wish him well on whatever he chooses to do from here. There's a plaque for him that I assume we'll get it to him at some point, and
We will.
And you can wish him well in person.
We will.
So with that, that's all I had for superintendent's report. And
You're the board.
I'm sorry, board president's report. I'll turn over to Mr. Rafe, superintendent's report.
Thank you. Thank you. As usual, I'm going to start off with a few good things. I This week, we had our first round of state testing. It seems awful early to be doing that, but it's the fall administration of third grade OAA, and we also had retests for high school students. So any high school student, because they have an opportunity to get they get a score of 1 through 5 on one of the high school tests for graduation that are now in place in end-of-course exams. And if they didn't like their score, they can redo it and try to up it. As you recall, they need to get a cumulative score to now graduate from high school since the OGT's gone away. Next week, we will be opening Shanahan Middle School's new Fab Space, their maker space. That was the donation from and they're hosting an open house on Tuesday, December 15th. That was that large donation, anonymous donation that we received from the Columbus Foundation. So very appreciative of that, and they're excited to get to work in that space. A couple holiday happenings coming up right here quickly. Orange High School's marching band will be performing this weekend on Sunday at the Browns game. Being a former Cleveland fan who is sworn off after 51 years of allegiance to the Browns, I'm sure it will be the best part of the afternoon.
Mr. Rafe, we're guaranteed that at least one group in orange will win.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. It will be the Marching Pioneers, trust me. And I guess I'm thankful that at least there'll be somebody in the stands watching them, because our band parents, I'm sure, will travel to the game.
Lots of tickets are available.
So, Monday, Orange High School will have their Holiday Pops concert. That is a tremendous show. And then next Tuesday on December 15th, Liberty Middle School has a holiday musical, and Wyandotte Run is also, and Tyler Run are having holiday shows. I encourage anybody and everybody to get out to those student performances. Just like the one we just saw, they are fabulous. A couple discussion items. Jeff's going to be giving us an update on the energy initiative, as he does every year. Once again, we're showing positive gains in our energy use, which saves us dollars. And then a couple few agenda items to highlight. Our assistant treasurer, who is an outstanding assistant treasurer, Emily Hatfield, has been redoing her contract, which was up since she was hired in a mid-year. There's an item on there to purchase Power Edge servers, and you had received a memo explaining that agenda item. And then we are approving the architectural services for High School 4, which is pending the passage of the March ballot issue. And we're pleased to bring back the esteemed Mr. Bruce Runyon to lead that project. And we're excited about the proposed High School 4. So some upcoming important dates. Obviously, our Board of Education, our June organizational meeting. I don't know if you figured out the seating arrangements for Mrs. Patrick when she comes on board. So that coming ahead. I too want to, I don't have redistricting embedded in the report or, as anything here in the Board of Education. But I do want to take a moment to thank everybody who was involved in the process. Mark Iannata and Karen Clark are community leaders who gave countless hours of time and service to that cause. The number of community volunteers who were involved, their input was invaluable to helping me make that decision. Our administrative team, our leadership team, who worked through that process also, obviously a number of administrators involved in that. And I do greatly appreciate the Board of Education's support in this process. The text I got from all of you yesterday supporting our decision, or my decision, was greatly appreciated. We know how difficult this is. I know how difficult it is personally for people, having been through it myself with my own children. And I do think we are in the process of refining our transition plans for the students who are leaving schools and coming into schools, and I have great confidence that we'll make the transition successful for students in that here in the future. So I just want to thank everybody again for all the support throughout the process. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Ray. Mr. Kern, the treasurer's report.
Yeah, just this evening, just approve a few action items, the usuals. I have financials for October and some minutes, approve amended appropriations and donation. Only one donation tonight, actually the band boosters donating $15,000 toward a purchase of the music boosters, I apologize, towards purchase of a truck. So Talk a little bit about the financials. The October financials are in there as Exhibit A1. They do reflect the updated 5-year forecast for October. As you would expect, we're pretty much on target at this point in the year. We'll continue to monitor. We did get new values for the value of our district as far as property is. We're slightly up about 3.8%. We had figured about 2% growth. So, of course, when we go to the May update, we'll factor that in there because that should mean a little bit of new additional revenue because of new construction. So that's a good thing.
That's good. It is.
Allow us, if we are fortunate to pass in March, continue with a no new millage pledge, because there actually we had very, modest 1% estimated there as part of that calculation. So that's a good thing. So continue going forward. That's all I have. Any questions?
Questions from Mr. Kern on the financials or any of his action items? No, thanks. All right, thank you, Mr. Kern. Okay, the first item is public participation session number 1. General comments?
Yeah, we do have one. Mark?
Thank you. For the record, Mark Iannata, 5908 Shadow Creek Drive, Westerville, Ohio, 43082. As many of you know who I am, and I'm here talking about redistricting. Also with me is Karen Clark. Many people thank us for what the job we do and think it's a thankless job and kind of question why we do it. But frankly, we couldn't do it without the help of a lot of other people, and what I really wanted to do is kind of acknowledge those folks tonight. First, I would acknowledge the administrators, the teachers, and the principals, many of whom came and participated at many of our meetings and gave a great amount of their time during the process, particularly the principals at Olentangy Meadows, Cheshire, and Shanahan. Next, I would thank all the committee members. We started out with 231 members. Not surprisingly, we didn't finish with that many, but I would say there was a hardcore group of probably about 75 to 80 people who really attended every meeting and gave a great deal of their time. The other group I'd like to thank would be the community members, as Kevin already indicated. At the forum, we probably had in excess of 350 people. I think despite some concerns we had about that some of the folks might not be as cooperative that evening, we, I think, had a very cooperative evening. I think it was very productive. We had the opportunity to get a lot of community feedback, which was helpful when the committee met one last time to come up with a recommendation for the superintendent. The other group I'd like to thank is DeYoung Richter, and particularly Scott Leopold and his team. In the past, they've kind of been an anonymous team. We haven't seen many of them, but Ann, Alex, Dan, Lee, and Matt were all vital contributors to the process. There's even one other member of the team, an unofficial member. That's Scott's wife. During this process, she gave birth to their first child. Given the time requirements we put on Scott, I'm sure there were times she thought she was a single mom, and so we really need to thank her. With regard to that team's effort, I really do want to stress to everybody that they are an essential part. We couldn't do it without them. When I first started doing this in 1997, we had less than 5,000 students in the district. This time around, we had approximately 14,000 K through 8 students that we were looking at in the redistricting process. You just can't do that with paper maps and Post-it notes any longer, but we need the IT and mapping support they provide. From the process, there were just a couple observations I wanted to make about the process. There are 3 realities of redistricting, and they remain the same, doesn't change. Not every student can go to the school closest to them. If that were the case, Orange Middle School would have 2,151 students, just a little bit above its capacity. Despite the best efforts, there is no perfect plan, and as a result, the final plan will upset somebody, and I'm sure it has. And I just would stress to them that many other students have been redistricted over the years, and they have survived, and the district will do everything in its power to simplify and make the process easier for them. A couple other things that I thought we should note. It's getting harder to predict the growth within the district, particularly without new builds. Maybe as the economy now is improving and new builds are going to happen, we'll have a little bit better luck, but it's getting harder to do. Past attempts to lock in attendance boundaries around fully developed areas has proven totally elusive. Present-day attendance areas for Cheshire and Olentangy Meadows, assuming they existed back in 2005, which they didn't, there would have been less than 250 students in those attendance areas at that time. Today, there is 750 and 850 students respectively in those two attendance areas. So you can understand with elementary schools of 650 to 675, we were required to do the redistricting. Also, what we're finding interesting is the life cycles of neighborhoods. In 2005, for K through 5 students, Highland Lakes North, my subdivision, was actually the 8th most populated subdivision, and Cheshire Crossing was the 29th most populated. Today, Cheshire Crossing is the 3rd most populated, and Highland Lakes North is the 30th most populated. So you can see the flip. The other thing, I know there's been a lot of concern from the folks at Cheshire, and there's been some statements made, I think some misinformation, and I feel somewhat obligated to correct that. The last major redistricting was 2012-2013. That did not affect Cheshire at the time. It was redistricted in 2009-2010. That was the first year. If you look at how long ago that was, someone who was in kindergarten at the year that school was first impacted is now a 6th grader. So we have not redistricted every year and affected students every year. It's been several years, and in particular with that area, this is really their first redistricting. So with that, again, I'd like to thank Karen and everyone else on the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
John, thank you.
Is this
Yes.
is this the first time we redistricted without opening a new building?
Yes.
Okay.
And Dublin is going through it now. They're not opening a new building, but they're going through it.
But I believe they're not asking the public for their input, isn't that correct? Or
They
changed
presented
their mind?
one plan.
Okay, so they didn't ask for it.
Yeah, so they presented one plan and said, give me your input.
Doesn't fit. All right. Anything else on that?
No, it's good report there.
Next up is our one and only discussion item, Mr. Gordon, who's going to come up and walk us through, or give us an update on our energy saving initiative.
Thank you.
What you have in front of you are, if you turn to the page, it says at the top, Olentangy Local Schools Energy Savings Initiative 2015 results. As you're aware, this is our first full year of the program that finished with fiscal year 2015. We started the program late at the start of, we put the person in place about the fall of 2014 fiscal year and really transitioned in about December, January of that year. So we had half a year savings. We reported last year that was between $400,000 and $500,000 for the partial year of fiscal year 14. Finishing up fiscal year 2015, our total energy savings was $589,951. Now, part of that money, part of that savings cost is where we've normalized for weather. Just want to note that. Every winter's different, and we try to make it as even as an apples and apples comparison as we can. So normalizing for the same weather for 2013, which is our base year, the year before we started any energy initiative, so $103,000 of that was savings normalized for weather. How we came to these results is we took our actual energy used, because gas and electric prices go up and down. We hedge gas, so that price goes up and down. Our electric, of course, we've got extra transmission costs have gone up while we're contracted for our energy. Cost of the actual energy per kilowatt hour, we have transmission costs that they have the ability to raise and do different things with. So making an apples and apples comparison, we felt like it was best to take our actual usage in 2013, fiscal year 13, and compare that to our actual usage in gas and electric and water for fiscal year 15. As you can see, the comparison on the page, the top graph, there's quite a bit of difference in the energy usage from 13 to what we've used in 2015. This is an apples and apples comparison, and what that means is the academy that we brought on last year, we've excluded that from this comparison because that would have obviously skewed those numbers. We've achieved these savings through being able to control, watching the building controls, when the air conditioning and the heat are running, when they're not running, and making sure that things aren't running when they're not supposed to be. I say it's a tip of the iceberg, and I said that last year, and I can say it again, that we're really, right now, we're working on the mechanicals and the functions we do as a district to save money. The next step is really getting the human behavior. We're going to try over the next year to roll out some of the energy teams in the buildings and start getting the buildings working on energy savings and try to get them excited so that we're then hitting the human behaviors. So they think twice when they walk out. If there is a light on that they need to flip the switch, they can do that. Or choice of maybe running half of if a lot of windows and light from the exterior, not doing that. But we need that to really come from the kids and get them excited and get them pushing it. So we're still working on the mechanical side. There's a long way to go there as well. Just to give you an example, I think last year we gave you an example of a chiller that was kicking on at different times. This year, if you remember back, just an example, one of the things that we do that we now are catching and really able to watch, the Labor Day weekend this past fall, the Friday before Labor Day, we had a thunderstorm, kicked out the power at one of our elementary buildings. But when everything came back on, we started looking at, just doing our regular audits, we noticed on Tuesday morning that one of our buildings was running higher than normal. But when that energy, the power shut off, it screwed up the controls to where it was telling it to do a couple different things. So the building, not the air conditioning, but electric motors, pumps were running all weekend when they didn't need to be. So just those pumps we noticed running, and we're able to catch it on Tuesday morning, correct that, and shut it down. Whereas, if we hadn't been watching as closely as we are, those pumps may still be running today because they're running in times when people aren't in the buildings. And so, it's something that might not have noticed. So that's just an example of what having eyes on this all the time doing has been able to help us save this money and achieve this. So I can't say that we will continue to increase savings in the number that we have. As you know, it gets harder and harder, like our academic achievements, to keep getting those incremental increases. But if we can keep what we've been able to save over the last year and save that much, keep that usage where it's at or a little bit lower, then it just compounds and we continue to build on it. So looking forward to moving forward, continuing on this initiative, and hopefully bringing back another better report next year at this time.
Are we still doing the by building analysis so you can kind of really zero in on the opportunities to save?
Yeah, you want to bring in the computer and do it, and yet we are. Okay. And the company that we're working with, that we started on this path 2 years ago, was a startup, and they have software that they've been developing along with us. So as we've seen a need for things, they've done that. And just to give you an example, and this is why I say it's the tip of the iceberg, we have a long way to go. One of our best performing elementary, we take our best performing elementary schools, and it's one of the style that we have 11 of. But if we take that and we can run a graph, then we can take other elementary schools and run that graph for the same time period. So to me, because they have the same equipment, similar equipment, almost the same number of pumps, same number of chillers, same number, so it should be similar. So when you have one that's performing well and one that's not, and they're 5 miles up the road with the same utility companies and the same, you have to wonder why. So we have the ability, the software, to run that graph for the lowest, the best performing, and then run, one that's not performing as well. And to me, when I say tip of the iceberg, everything between that lower performing, you look at that graph, there's that gap. That gap is potential savings. And that's why I say it's tip of the iceberg and a lot further to go. We may not get them running exactly the same because there are little things, or maybe more kids in the building, less kids, some of those things. But they should be closer than they are. And that's our next challenge, is to take those comparisons and start really looking, okay, this building's not running as well as the others. When are the peaks? What's different here? And really diving into the numbers and looking at, on weekends, a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, what's this one doing compared to this one? So that's the next step in what we're trying to achieve and working towards. So.
Yeah, I just think it's important for us to keep in mind how this kind of fits into the permanent improvement discussion, right? Because we first made the investment in the software platform to get the data, to understand where the usage was. Now we've got the data, and we can really be focused and prioritize where to make the right investments to yield the most savings. So, things like the permanent improvement that we'll be looking for in March will help us further, that effort and continue to position us to optimize that data and put that data to good use.
Absolutely, and I've discussed before, mentioned the energy, look at doing a house bill project, the energy savings initiative, where we're looking at LED lights, we're looking at changing out some of the older pieces of equipment, a chiller, some boilers, some of those things that will help with that. So it's constantly trying to do that, and that also is another way that we're trying to alleviate that PI and really be efficient with how we get the dollars and how we're spending the dollars replacing equipment. So.
Like the high schools do have, environmental clubs, and I do think getting those kids involved in changing the adult behavior. I know, I'm sure your kids nag you just like mine about turning lights off and saving energy and recycling and all those things. So the kids can be that key to changing adult behavior.
That would be a big step. Another thing that we plan to do, and we have a monitor here. We're going to put a monitor out here in the hallway showing our energy usage and doing it. And we said, here we're not going to get as many people at the office here. We're actually going to install over the next few months monitors in each high school, so that somebody walking through the commons, going to a basketball game or going to some other event in the theater, walking, they can see that, and we'll have that software reporting that and able to show that. We already have one at the academy, the STEM Academy, and they did a project this year. So Chris was here when she was still managing. I went down, we spoke to the group at the beginning of the semester, or the 9 weeks, and then we talked about some of the things that we're doing in different ways of saving money and things that we're doing, and they put it on some students to go in and look and say, okay, how else can the district save money? So they went and toured a couple different elementary schools, talked to the teachers, talked to the students, and came back and presented ideas at the end of the 9 weeks. It was great sitting there. They had a committee of us that sat and listened to their ideas and a lot of good things, and some of which is on our energy project as well, looking and analyzing some of those same things. So it was a good experience, but they're excited about it. And some of the ideas kids had, one had an idea, he wanted to put a cover on a chair and harness the body heat, turn it into energy. And I thought that's brilliant. I'd let him know he's ready to get that done. I'd invest in that. So if he could figure that out, I'd invest in it. So, all good stuff.
Good.
Any other comments or questions for Mr. Borden?
No, it's great. It's great stuff.
Good job.
Thank you.
Next item is item 11, public participation session number 2 regarding action items. Do we have any? Okay. Next is the board action item, and that's to assign a president pro tem for the organizational meeting in January. So could I get a nomination for a president pro tem?
I would nominate Mr. King for that position. Can we do that, or do we need or Ms. Fiesel maybe as the person to push along? You have to walk
Yeah, I
through
would think
that.
so.
So
Yes.
Ms. Fiesel, I would recommend.
Yes.
Nominate Ms. Fiesel.
I'll second.
And this is just to open up and get the meeting started for the beginning of the year, because
that's
when
right,
we
she needs to-
adjourn tonight, we adjourn sine die, which means our business is done for the year.
Yes.
So when we start after the first of the year, by law, we have to have our first meeting by January 15th. It's a brand-new board, and so we just need someone to start the meeting, and then we go through the officer election process.
So you open the meeting, run the process, and then we'll have our structure
turn
in
it
place
over.
and we'll move on.
Exactly.
So with that, we have a motion to appoint Julie Wagner Fiesel as a president pro tem. We have
I
a
second.
second? Any discussion? Let's call the roll.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. That item passes 5-4-0, sorry. Treasurer action items, Mr. Kern, you want to present your action
Yeah, I'd
items?
like to present this evening treasurer action items A through C. Approve financials for October 2015. Approve minutes for October 22nd of 2015. Approve the amended FY16 appropriations at the fund level. And approve donation to the district.
So moved.
A second.
Any discussion? Okay, call roll.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. Mr. Rafe, would you want to present superintendent action items?
Yes, I present superintendent action items as amended.
All.
Oh, yeah, let's do them. We're not pulling any out. I don't want any pulling out.
I missed that.
I'll present superintendent action items A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
In H.
And H is as amended. Yes, as amended.
I'll move.
Got it. Thank you.
Accept.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I'd like to make one comment
Yes.
regarding the contract for the architectural team, Fanning and Howey, and in subsequent to that, which you see the resolution to go out to the public with an RFQ for construction manager at risk. Two very important meetings of the Facilities Committee and in a subcommittee of the Facilities Committee. There's just great talent in that group of people. And Roger and I have been fortunate to be able to attend those meetings and just to listen to their discussions, their expertise. The arrival at both the selection of the architect and the decision to go through the procurement process for construction were well thought out, balanced, pros and cons, very excellent discussion. They were both, I don't remember about the facilities meeting, but the last one, the construction procurement, was a little over 2 hours in length. Just great pros and cons discussion, so my hat's off to those people.
I would just add too that discussion that the professionals in the room were really focused on the district and what the expectations that have been created over the years on really being efficient and being effective, but protecting the best interests and the risks. So that was a big deal, and there was a lot of talk about that. So it was a good group.
That committee has a lot of
It's amazing.
experience
It's
and
amazing.
know-how, and whew, that's what they do for a living.
And it really
It's
helped too
great.
in the discussion because of the being able to ferret out the different options that we had and people that had real life experience with that. You know, we have a gentleman that works at Ohio State and has managed, $100 million, $160 million projects and things, and that's good stuff. So we're pretty lucky.
Yep.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. So items pass 4-0. I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn sine die. Just ask the board, when we do get back together in January, we'll be picking leadership and also thinking about what committees you want to liaison to, what areas interest you, what areas you want to know more about, because it's always a good opportunity to deepen your knowledge of the district by participating on those committees. So keep that in mind as we get through the holidays and get back in January and start thinking about next year. Okay, so with that, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Okay, please call roll.
Mrs. Fiesel,
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Bartz?
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes. We are adjourned.
Yes.
Sine die.